Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to TechGig webinar series, our endeavor to empower techies. We believe that sharing of knowledge is the key to enhance our skills and grow us as professionals. With this principle in mind, we have initiated a series of webinars conducted by industry experts to give you all a crisp insight of various domains. The topic of today's session is how Agile turns fragile. Our guest speaker today is Mr. Hiren Doshi, Managing Director at Practice Agile Solutions Private Limited. Mr. Hiren Doshi is the leading Agile coach and trainer within India's Agile community with over 18 years of software development experience. As an Agile coach, trainer, and consultant, he has guided enterprise environments from US, UK, Malaysia, Singapore, Saudi Arabia, and India. He has led the adoption of Agile practices for large distributed teams at Tesco.com and EMC Corporation. A highly sought-after speaker at Agile events, Hiren also holds several credentials, including an MS in Computer Science from University of Massachusetts, USA. He is a certified PMI ACP Agile certified practitioner, a Scrum professional, Six Sigma Green Belt holder, and a project management professional. He has been a guest speaker for various corporations like Cognizant, Thomson Reuters, Mahindra Satyam, Mastek, UPES, and PMI chapters across India. So without further delay, I introduce you all to our guest speaker, Mr. Hiren Doshi. Over to you, Mr. Doshi.
Thanks, Mohini. Can you hear me?
Hear you very well,
Mohini,
Mr.
can you
Doshi.
hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you well.
Okay, very good. Okay. Thanks, Mohini, for the wonderful introduction, and welcome everyone for this webinar on how Agile turns fragile. I think I'm going to skip over the introduction as Mohini has done a wonderful job. However, I just do want to just say one more thing, that I have been in this industry for 18 years, out of which for the past 7 years I have been practicing Agile. And when I say practicing Agile, I mean working with teams at the ground level and helping them move to the next level. So that's what I have been doing. I have myself been a developer, tester. I moved into project management, program management, and then as an Agile coach. So most likely I'll be able to relate to most of the participants we have today. So for the next 10 to 12 minutes, what I want to do is I want to get everyone on the same page on what it means to be Agile. So with that in mind, I want you all to look at this diagram. There are two castles. One is a knitted castle that's on the left, and then we have Lego castle that's on right. So this is something that was shared at Agile 2012, and I think it does a pretty good job on explaining what traditional means. So if you look on the left hand side about the knitted castle, you can think of all the requirements that you gather. You do the designing, then you go to do the testing, coding testing, then you go ahead and do the deployment, and then it goes in the maintenance mode. So depending on which stage you get a change in requirement, let's say your coding has been completed, you're in the testing phase and a requirement changes. So for example, in this, let's say requirement changes that, okay, I don't want this tower that we are seeing, I want to change the tower. It becomes kind of practically impossible, or it will take a lot of rework, and it would be like more of a patchwork when it comes to the traditional. And when you look at the right, you see the Lego blocks. It's a building block, one block over other block. So in this case, if you are asked that, you know what, I do want to change this tower, I think it becomes a bit easier. You know, it will take some rework, it might take some refactoring, but it will be done. So just keep this in mind, you know, to understand what traditional and Agile means. With this, what I want to do is I want to get into what is Agile project management. So for example, even if you're going for an interview, or if someone asks you what is Agile, or if you're implementing Agile, so I want you to learn these 5 terms very carefully. You know, Agile means iterative way of developing, producing incremental delivery of software in a time-boxed interval with constant feedback from the customer and delivering business value. I'm going to help you dissect this one bit at a time. So when we talk about iteratively, iterative basically means repeat, keep on repeating, keep on repeating. So if you're already practicing Agile, you're already doing sprints, 1 sprint after 2 sprints, after 3 sprints, after 4 sprints. So you're doing sprints, and these sprints are time boxed. And So if a sprint is a time box of 2 weeks, sprint 1 will be of 2 weeks. Following that, the sprint 2 will begin and it will end in 2 weeks. Following that, sprint 3 will begin and end in 2 weeks. So you don't change the time box. The time box is a cadence and it is a discipline that you have to maintain. So that is basically iterative. You keep on repeating. Let's take incrementally. Incrementally is basically building blocks, one block over the other block over the other block. So just to help you, let's look at the next slide. There's an example that I've put together. So let's say I'm working for a customer and I am building an email application for a customer, something very similar to Gmail. Customer comes to me and says, you know what, Hiren, I want you to go ahead and help me build a filtering capability. I have a new requirement on filtering capability. Can you help me with that? And I said, yes, Mr. Customer, I can definitely help you. However, do understand that I work in agile mode and my sprints are of 2 weeks, my time box are of 2 weeks. So when you talk about this filtering requirement, it is a very big requirement. I know for a fact that I can't complete in 2 weeks and I always deliver business value. So let's take this filtering requirement and let's generate some sub requirements. So when you talk about filtering, you can do filtering via date range, you can do filtering via subject field, you can do filtering using keywords, you can do filtering using from field, to field. So there are multiple ways of doing filtering. For our story over here, let's assume for all intents and purposes, each of this requirement is of 2 weeks. It's going to take one sprint basically, that's 2 weeks. So I can't work on everything because I can only work on one requirement just based on the assumptions that we are making. So I asked Mr. Customer, what is the most important thing for you? What is it that you want? Customer says, you know what, if you can deliver date range, it might work out for me. It might work out for me. So I said, okay, fine. So I go ahead, I go to my team, I work with my team, and at the end of 2 weeks, I show date range to the customer. He can put from date, he can put to date, and he basically gets range of emails that he received during this date range. Customer looks at it and says, oh, this is perfect. This is exactly what I was looking for. That is one feedback. Or he might say, you know what, this is good, but I need some tweaking. So whatever it is, but we are getting feedback from the customer. If we get a bit of a negative feedback, even then it's good because we are getting early feedback from our customer and we can go ahead and fix it. But if let's assume that everything is well, customer says, oh, I can use this date range and in fact I can go live with this. And if it goes live, he can start making money on this. The customer says, you know what, now you have done this, how about keywords? Can you do keywords? I said, fine. We go ahead, work on the keywords for the next 2 weeks, deliver it to a customer. Customer is very happy. He says, oh, perfect. And then I am excited. I say, oh, so can I, should I start working on the subject field? Customer says, you know what, I don't care about subject field. Date range and keywords are the only things that I care about because I don't care about subject, I don't care about from, and I don't care about to. So we are doing multiple things over here. First of all, there was a requirement. We are not completing the entire requirement, which we would have done in the traditional development because we would have designed it, we would have coded it, and we could have tested it. Over here, we are doing it in pieces, and we are taking feedback from the customer, we are taking the feedback, and we are stopping where the customer says, okay, stop. So that is basically incremental. So if you see, iteratively and incrementally, we are building blocks. We delivered date range, we delivered keywords, and that's it. And we delivered it in time box of 2 weeks each. We're taking constant feedback from our customer, and we are delivering business value. So even after the date range, customer could sell the product and he can start making money. So that in short is Agile. So these are the 5 terms you want to remember when it comes to Agile. Having said that, basically Agile is also tied with 4 values and 12 principles. So let's look at these values. So if you look at these values, they are very open-ended basically. It says individuals and interactions over processes and tools, working software over comprehensive documentation, customer collaboration over contract negotiation, responding to change over following a plan. So basically there were like 17 thought leaders. They got together and there are multiple Agile methodologies. We are talking about year 2000, 2001, and there are many Agile methodologies, and there was a lot of confusion. So this thought leaders decided, you know what, let's go out, let's go on for a vacation, let's free up our mind, and let's get together and let's see if we can put some type of manifesto. And they came up with the manifesto, which had 4 values and 12 principles. So these are the 4 values, and if you look at it, they are very open-ended. They didn't want to be very prescriptive. They didn't want it that way. So now that causes a problem, because all these 4 values, they can be interpreted in multiple ways. People are interpreting it in different ways throughout the industry. And if you're practicing Agile, I'm sure you must have heard about lots of things. Agile means no documentation, which is absolutely nonsense. Agile means documentation. You have to create documentation. There's writing in the end. That is why there's values on the items on the right. We value the items on the left more. When we say Agile means no documentation, that is wrong. We want to do documentation, but if we can get away with 2 pages of document, don't create a Bible. Just do the bare minimum. Now, if you are a CMMI level company, CMMI level 5, or if you are an ISO 9000 level company, where you are getting audited at a constant intervals, and where you have to produce documents, then don't skip a step. Go ahead and create whatever documentation you need. But this is just a guideline that we are giving. Then you will hear something like, Agile means you can change your requirements anytime you want. Again, that's false. You can't change your requirements. You can change your requirements at certain times. But for example, let's say I'm developing an application like something that's competing ICICI Bank online banking, and I'm putting my vision and scope, and I'm saying, you know what, I am not going to get into mutual fund trading or stock trading, even though ICICI is doing it. So that is out of scope. So if there is any new requirement that comes in that is out of scope, you don't work on it. You just take it off. You said, you know what, it is out of scope. However, if there are requirements that are in scope, there are some rules of engagement you want to follow. So if the sprint planning has happened and the team is already working on the stories, you don't go and disturb them. But if there is a high-level requirement that comes in, then put it in the backlog, move something out. So that is something that is allowed. So that's what it means by changing requirements. Then there is talk about Agile means no upfront design. Again, that is wrong. Agile does require upfront design. You just can't say, you know what, I have my first requirement, let me start Agile development. It doesn't work that way. You have to think through everything. You have to think about all the things in the component stack. You have to figure out what is your architecture going to look like. You have to figure out what your stack is going to look like, what type of technology you're going to use, and eventually you want to find a certain story that is going through. By the way, when I talk about story, that also means requirement. Requirements are called stories in Agile. So you take a certain requirement that slices through all the layers of the stack. It's called steel threading. That is going to give you some type of proof of concept. So that is something that you want to do upfront. So all these are in play. So the idea I want to raise over the thing that I'm raising over here is there is a pitfall over here, because these 4 values are you can interpret it in multiple ways, and you will see it if you're practicing Agile. You will see this in the field. Let's get into the next slide. I do want to talk about the 12 principles. I'm not going to go through all the principles because we can stay here the entire day. So I'm going to take few items and I'm going to talk about those items. For example, right, let's look at the fourth item. Business people and developers must work together on a daily basis. Now we have to again go back. When this manifesto and values and principles were written, when they were written, there was not that much outsource of work that was happening. Most of the work was confined within one location, one geography. And all of a sudden there was a big push where we started having a lot of distributed work between West and the East. So now when we talk about business people, we are talking about the people who are generating the requirements. And in our case, we are talking about specifically a product owner who is basically a customer facing guy. He generates the requirements and he sends it across to the team. Now, if you can imagine, there's a product owner who is sitting on the West Coast, somewhere in UK or somewhere in US, and the team is sitting over here. And then if you look at the, I believe there is the 6th item, which says the most efficient and effective method of conveying information to and within development team is face-to-face conversation. That is not going to happen for that matter, because our product owner is sitting on the West Coast and our team is sitting over here. So you will have to figure out a way. Can you enable someone like a business analyst who can play the role of proxy product owner? So these are the things that you'll have to keep in mind while you're practicing Agile. And if you don't think, if you don't put these practices in place, what's going to happen is your Agile is going to turn fragile very soon. So that's what it means with business people and developers work together on a daily basis. Look at the next item. Build projects around motivated individuals. Give them the environment and support they need and trust them to get the job done. Now, unfortunately, you don't get a motivation meter on eBay or Flipkart. You just can't go and say, you know what, I want to buy a motivation meter, and then you take the meter and you scan a person, oh, he's a motivated individual, and then you go to the second person, oh, he's not a motivated person, and then go to the third person. It doesn't work that way. So basically, this is the soft skill of the management and things that comes in play, where you have to nurture an environment where people feel free, people feel safe to bring up ideas, and basically they can self-organize. They're empowered to make decisions. So this is something that you have to build. And again, motivation means different things to different people. So that is again something that you'll have to work through. So these are soft things, but that is something that we need to work on. Guys, are you able to hear me? Mohini, are you able to hear me? Because I'm seeing this red box.
Yeah,
Hello, Mohini?
I can hear you. I can hear you very well. Your voice is coming out
Okay,
fine.
because there's a red box. Okay, very good. So I'll just continue in that case. So that's what motivated individuals are. So let's get moving. So working software, again, you'll hear about working software all the time when it comes to Agile. Remember, in our case of Gmail, we delivered working software in terms of date range. We delivered working software in terms of keyword. We did not just deliver the UI part, or we did not deliver only the database part, because that is something that customers won't know anything to do about. They won't know what to do about it, you know. Let's talk about sustainable development. I will say this is a very key factor. Sustainable development. What does this mean? So imagine a team, a team of 6 or 7 people, engineers, and they are working. They say that, you know what, based on our capacity, we think in this next 2 weeks we can work on 4 stories. Now, if some high-profile person comes in and says, you know what, oh guys, only 4. How about doing 2 more? So instead of 4, now they have to do 6 stories, and they say, okay, we'll do it. Now this is a very moral team. So what they're going to do is they're going to spend some nights, they're going to work over the weekends maybe, and they'll get the story done. So now they have raised the bar. So the person who gave them the story thinks, oh, they can always do 6 stories. So what's the big deal? Next time maybe 7. And if they take it, eventually they will continue, but they are going to burn out at some point. So you want to keep that in mind. You know, can you have sustainable development? Most of the organizations that I have worked with, what you see is, you know, they try to maintain sustainable development, but when push comes to shove, all things that go down out of the back door, and they get into this rut of, you know, working late nights, weekends to make the release. So this is something that you have to be very careful of. You want to keep that in mind. Let's talk about simplicity, the art of maximizing the amount of work not done. Now, this statement has been worded a bit differently, but what this means is, if I can give an example, we all use Microsoft Word, yeah? So if I say Microsoft Word has like 1,000 features or 100 features, what percentage of features do you use on a daily basis? And I've done it in most of my trainings, and the answer I get is like 5%, 10%. So think about it. 10% of the features are frequently used. 90% of the features are not used. So if I can prioritize this 10% of the features on top of the list and just work on that, I can make a release. Okay, and I don't need to do this 90%, or they can come in the following release. So think about this. If the customer says I want A and B, don't give him C. Let's not gold plate. Only give the bare minimum that they are asking for. That is simplicity. The next item, you know, self-organizing team. Again, it's a heavily loaded term. You know, it seems very simple. The dictionary meaning will also be very simple. But when it comes to self-organizing, this is the challenge that you'll see in most of the teams. You know, because it's very difficult to nurture and create an environment where they feel safe. They bring out the ideas where they can make quick decisions. You know what? Oh, I have option 1, 2, and 3. You know, without any bind. You know what? Can I take the risk of going with option 2 because I think that is the best option? Just communicating with few members. Or if he has to wait for like few hierarchical people, you know, that, oh, I have to take sign off from this person and this person and this person, and only then do it. Basically, it's going to slow down the entire process, because Agile is a fast-paced environment. You want to move on. You want to keep on progressing. So these are the values and the principles, you know. So we are talking about that 5 items that I talked, 5 words that I talked about. We talked about 4 values and 12 principles. So if you think about it, Agile is very simple, isn't it? It is extremely simple. But still, if you look, people like Ken Schwaber, the founder of Scrum, he says, you know what, I estimate that 75% of those organizations using Scrum will not succeed in getting the benefits they hope for from it. 75% will not succeed in getting the benefits. It's not saying that 75% of the people are going to fail. So that's where that Agile and Fragile comes in. You know, you have implemented Agile, but somehow you're just struggling. You're just struggling. You're able to deliver, but you're struggling. You're struggling. So that's the fragility part I'm talking about. Now, if you look at a bit further, now Scrum Scrum is just a one framework. So to implement Agile, there are many methodologies. You can do Scrum, you can do Lean Kanban, you can do extreme programming. There are crystal clear, and there are many more that I talked about earlier, where the thought leaders got together. But Scrum is a project management framework. It just gives you 3 roles, and it will give you some ceremonies that you have to do, like planning meeting, daily stand-ups, reviews, retrospective, and it will say, these are the artifacts that you produce, like product backlog, sprint backlog, and maybe the burn down chart. So this is what Scrum says. So Scrum does not dictate any extreme programming practices like continuous integration, test-driven development, automation. So think about this. So if you look at this, the next chart, it's very interesting to me. Again, this is a survey from version 1. So they have been doing Agile survey for whoever is practicing Agile in the industry. And I believe this is again a survey for 2011, where around 5,500 or 6,000 people participated who are practicing Agile. And this number shows up something, right? That says 52% of the population is just doing Scrum. That means they are not either practicing extreme programming or any other practices. And what my practice has shown over the past 6 years is, if you want to get real benefits of Agile, you have to overlay Scrum with extreme programming. You want to overlay it with Lean Kanban principles. When you use it in combination, that's where you get the maximum benefit. Scrum by itself will only take you so far. For example, right, Scrum says no automation. So let me take an example. Let's say a team is working and team decides, that we are not going to do any automation whatsoever. And with that, we are going to take 3 stories. And the team successfully completed 3 stories. They worked on 3 stories. They manually tested it. Everything is good, very good. They move to the next sprint, and the team says, now I'm just making an assumption that all stories are of same size over here. So team says, this time we can only take 2 stories. Oh, why is that? When you ask, the team says, what? Because for these stories, I have to do manual testing, and then I have to go back to the sprint 1 stories, and I have to do the regression testing. Ah, okay. So what about sprint 3? What can you do? Can you do 2 stories? 2 stories might be too much, because we have to go back and do regression testing for 2 stories in sprint 2 and 3 stories in sprint 1. Ah, okay. So basically what you see is, over time, the return of investment diminishes. Now you think of this in another way, where you're taking 2 stories, instead of taking 3 stories, but you took 2 stories, but you automated it. Now you move to the next sprint. Again, you might be able to do 2 stories, you automate it, because now you get free regression testing, because it's machine time, it's not human time. And that saves a lot of time, basically, a lot of time, lot of money. So you might want to think of this. So Scrum itself does not prescribe it, but you have to overlay with some automation, some other practices that you want to put in place. Look at that 8%. 8% is again very interesting, which says, we don't know what methodology we are using. So this reminds me of something. Just yesterday, in fact, I was at my client side, and I was signing into a register, because I'm a contractor, so I have to sign in my laptop and everything. So while I was signing in, what I saw was that this guy, the security guy, he had a new Samsung mobile phone on the desk. So I said, oh, do you like it? He said, no, I don't like it. I said, why? What happened? Oh, it's not Android. I said, oh, okay. So what is the problem? He said, my problem is I get very slow videos. When I look at YouTube videos, they basically stop and start, they stop and start, they stop and start. I said, okay. But what type of plan do you have? Oh, I'm using this Vodafone service. I'm having 2G plan. I said, maybe that is your problem. Because if you have a 3G plan, it will work. So I don't think it is anything to do with the phone or anything to do with Android. Android is just a buzzword that he heard. So you'll hear lots of things, lots of people will just hear, you'll hear this buzzword, oh, I do Agile because we do daily stand-ups. So you want to be very careful about those concepts, those folks basically. So that's the Agile methodology I want to talk about. Let me move on. Let me bring you to the barriers. So again, this is again from the survey of version 1 for 2011. And to be very honest, you'll see this consistent pattern across all 5 years. The numbers might be a bit on and off, but you will see this consistent pattern that the barriers to Agile adoption is ability to change organizational culture, availability of personnel with right skills, general resistance to change, and management support. That's true, and I'll tell you what happens when you go with this big bang approach of Agile adoption. When you say, what, we are going to introduce Agile, it basically shakes up your entire organization. It is going to shake top down everyone, and most of the people who get shaken are on the management layer, or they are the veterans, who just knows one company and they have grown with the company. So they basically get shaken up, and I'll tell you why. Because if you look at our traditional hierarchy, there are a lot of management chains. You'll see manager, senior manager, director, senior director, VP, and so on. So that's how normally our hierarchy works. Again, it might not be same for all organizations. And again, I'm just talking based on my experience. Again, you please use this as a disclaimer. So what you will see is they fear, oh, I had this portfolio. I had this team of these folks who were reporting to me directly. So I built my own hierarchy. Now we are saying we want to do Agile. So when we do Agile, I have to let go of my command and control, because my team members are going to self-organize. They are empowered to do the work. That is number one. And very soon you realize that, oh, now the team members don't report to me directly, because now they are part of the Scrum team. And in the Scrum team, I don't have any say, because I'm actually not involved in that Scrum, because there's the Scrum team, and then there's a product owner, and then the Scrum master. And they self-organize, they figure out what they're supposed to do. So what type of say do I have? And generally that becomes a problem, because it's a big mind shift change. And it's like more of a job security at that point. So you have to be very careful when you implement Agile. And again, honestly, I don't think the management layer is going anywhere, because we do need managers. They are there for a reason. They are there for people's career growth. They are there to help them with their personal development plan. They are there to coach them. And when we implement Agile, we are going to see lots of things, where we need their influential skills to make some quick decisions, influence the team by leading the examples. We want them to help with the forward gazing, something like release and roadmap, release planning, road mapping. We want them to help us remove impediments. So there are tons and tons of things. It's just a mindset change, but it is very difficult for to get that registered. So that is one of the challenge. In fact, I know of one of our managers in one of my companies that I worked earlier, a very traditional project manager who likes to plan everything down to the dot. And that person basically came to Agile, and he was not able to adapt to the changes, using Microsoft Project Plan to identify things and figuring out what are we going to do next, and what are we going to do next, and then what are we going to do next. Because by the time we go to the next, the things have already changed and we're already doing something else, because the teams are very quick. They're nimble in adapting to things, into the stories, to the changing requirements, and the project plan will never make sense, to be very honest, when it comes to the traditional project plan and the Agile plan. So eventually, she just knew that she doesn't fit into the model, and maybe she needs to do something where she fits in, and that basically helps at times. You'll also hear some things like but we have nailed this process. Our traditional process is so good. We have worked so hard over the years, and we have come with this gated approach, the checkpoint model, and it works like a charm. Why do we have to change? And then if those teams are forced to change, or those people are forced to change, what will happen is they'll say, you know what, let's do this bits of Agile, and let's try to do these parts of things that have been working well, and let's call it ourselves hybrid. That's a big problem. That's a big problem. If you're going to do Agile, give it a fair chance, try it full, go all the way, and then you can see what is working and what is not working. Don't go with this mindset that we are going to go with the hybrid approach. It's going to be disaster, to be very honest. So that's the barriers to Agile adoption. Now let's dive deeper into the actual workings. So I'm talking about Agile teams over here, Agile team pitfalls. So when we talk about Agile team, we are talking about a group of developers, testers, and then we have a Scrum Master, and then we have a product owner. So that's what we mean by a Scrum team or Agile team. So when it comes time to select a Scrum Master and his skill set, we want to be very careful on whom you select, because it makes a big difference. If you get a Scrum Master who is not going to get the respect of the team, or a Scrum Master who is very command and control driven guy, it is going to create more harm than good. So you want to definitely keep that in mind. you'll hear, so normally I get this question, is a Scrum Master a full-time job? Is it a part-time job? Uh, Honestly, if you ask me, I'll say it is a full-time job, and it is a very important, very essential job to get your team organized, self-organized, empowered, and move in the right direction. So it is more than a full-time job. Basically, Scrum Master can keep extremely busy throughout the day. With that, let me take a few examples. For example, I was doing Scrum Master duties. So is it a full-time or part-time, right? So in fact, in one of the companies, I was asked to do Scrum Master duties for 3 teams. Uh, so to be very honest, I did justice to none of the teams, because if you have one product backlog and if you have multiple teams, normally what's going to happen is the sprints will start on the same day and it's going to end on the same day. When it starts on the same day, and if you have teams aligned together, as a Scrum Master, I can be in only one of the planning meetings. If I get into one of the planning meetings, I won't be available for the other 2 planning meetings and I won't be able to do justice to them. So think about the impediments removement. Even that becomes a challenge. Then think about retrospective. Even that becomes a challenge, because you have to go through 3 retrospectives. It just becomes too much, and you won't be able to do justice to any of the teams basically. I also want to talk about Scrum Master skill set, right? I do want to I want to take an example and demonstrate, what a good skill set can do. So again, I'll go back to one of my previous jobs. I was a Scrum Master for one of the teams, and then there was a void of a Scrum Master for one of the teams, and we had this a very good, very well-respected kind of a veteran engineer who grew through the ranks of the company. He started out of college and he just grew with the organization, and was there for like good 15, 16 years, and that person was playing the role of a Scrum Master. However, a very different mindset, a very different approach, a very command and control driven type of person. It's like, it's my way or highway. So that person was holding the fort right now, and I was asked to do Scrum Master duties for that team, and that team knew me very well. So when I went to that team, people started complaining. They said, Hiren, we are not very happy with this person, and we need help. And I knew that was the reason I was moved over there. So one thing of observation was, I said, what, I'm not going to make any changes. Let me just study and let me see what's needed over here. So while I was studying, what I noticed was, in the planning meeting, what he will do is he'll go to the board, he'll say, these are the stories, he'll put the entire design together, and it's okay, this thing you can do it, this thing you can do it, this thing you can do it, this thing you can do it. And basically, nobody will argue or nobody will even open their mouth. It's basically, he's just directing the work and the work is happening, kind of thing. You get to the daily stand-up, you'll see, that person is standing and everyone gives update and he says yes, no, whatever. So that's the type of personality we're talking about. So eventually I said, what, I think I'm ready to talk to him. So one of the days I said, what, let's go out for a lunch. Maybe, and in US, a free lunch is a big thing. So we went, sat for lunch, and I said, what, looks like something is not right. Maybe the team does not have that much respect for you. And he says, yeah, I know about it. And I said, okay, so what do you think? He said, what, I told management, I don't want to do Agile. Keep me in silo and it will work out very well. I said, what, that's a gone case, right? That's a gone battle, because we are all moving into Agile space, and either you fall in line or we need to do something else for you. And he got the message. Said, oh, no. So I want to be part of this journey. Okay, very good. So now that is clear. So how can you help? How can you change? And he says, you tell me. I said, fair enough. Now that I have observed, this is just my observation. Again, I'm just going to make suggestions. You tell me whether you're okay with that or not, right? So what I said is, I've been observing, and what I see is, you are pretty good when it comes to designing. That's your passion. When it comes to coding, that's your passion. And he says, yes, you're absolutely right. I said, okay, how about this? Starting the next sprint, what we do is we just give you 10%. You are loaded to do the work. Coding, you can only do coding. Designing part, I want you to give the marker pen to the team members, let them go ahead and do the design on the board, and you're just going to observe and you're going to give your feedback and they are going to correct it. Do you think you can do that? He said, yeah, that's what I can do. Yeah, I like that. Okay, very good. So that's number one. We also have 2 new members within the team. And I think you have the right skill set and you can be a fantastic mentor to them. what do you think of getting them up to speed? Do you think you'll be able to do that? They said, yeah, absolutely. I would like to do that. And I said, okay, very good. So these are the 2 tasks. And the third and the very important task I want you to do is code review. Basically, I want you to be the police. So before any of the team members delivers the code into the main branch, you have to review the code and you have to give them feedback. And only once you approve it, they can deliver it. What do you think? He said, yeah, absolutely. I would love it, right? And this went on for a while, and we did the subtle change. And the same people who are complaining, they came back and they said, this is one of the best things that has happened. We'll do some design, we'll do some work, we'll take it to this person, he will rip it apart, and he'll say, what, this is wrong, you can do it this way, you can do it this way. And basically, we are better designers, we are better coders, just because what has happened, The reason I bring this up is very important. So the Scrum Master, he's just not there to facilitate. He's there to monitor the soft skills. He's there to coach the team in the right direction. He's there to help them move in the right direction. So these are the things, these are the qualities that you want in a Scrum Master. So that's what I wanted to bring out on this. Let's get into the next topic. I want to talk about product owner. As I told earlier, the product owner is the business facing guy. Normally, they are on the West Coast. If they are here, well and good. It works out very well. I do want to talk about the next slide where it talks about what a story looks like. So if you look, I'm just demonstrating one story over there which says, ticketing system, credit card payment. And the description says, as a user, I should be able to make payments online for the purchase tickets using credit cards, so I don't have to arrive early and stand in the queue. It's a very simple description. So stories are basically written in this way. We want to move away from that traditional approach. The system shall do this, and then giving like list of 50 items, and then saying the assumptions and the risks. You want to get away from that model, and what you want to do is you just want to give that description. And basically, out of this description comes the negotiation with the product owner, where you basically talk. You have the conversation with the product owner, and out of that flows the acceptance criteria. So basically the acceptance criteria says, if I achieve this, I have met my story's goal. And if you look at each item of the acceptance criteria, they are measurable. They have to be measurable. You should be able to say 1 or 0 on each of the acceptance criteria. User should be able to select from the multiple credit cards. It is measurable. User should be able to enter name, so that is measurable. You should get a success message or a failure message. Again, both of them are measurable. So you want to write its stories in this format. Let me take you to the next slide. It's very important, right? Most of the business, they fail in writing stories. So what you're seeing right now is I'm just created a stack, component stack, which says, there is a user interface, there is a client code, there is server code, and then there is database. So stories can be written in multiple ways. So this is one way of writing story. A user interface, second story is for the client code, third story is for the server code. Now what you're doing is basically you're building individual ownership on the stories over here. So what's going to happen is you're going to create silos within your team. So if you have a team, you're not going to work in collaboration. You're going to have a UI engineer who's going to just work on the UI story. You're going to have a person who's going to just work on the client code, a person just working on the database, and basically you're creating silos. That's a very wrong way of writing stories. And again, so let's say story 1, 2, and 3 have to be completed to complete a story. Only story 1 and 2 has been completed. It has no business value. We are getting away from that model. Instead, you want to write stories in this form. You want to write stories in vertical slices that goes top down, that cuts through all the layers of the stack. So now, if you can think of story 1 as the Gmail thing that I talked about, that is about the date range. The second story is about the keywords. The third story is about the subject field, and so on. So basically, what's happening is you're giving team ownership. So the entire team owns the story, and that works out very well. So think about writing stories this way. And I believe this is one of the major challenges. And again, you can ping me offline for that, and I'll be more than happy to talk through this. So having said that, let's move on to the next level where I'm talking about the co-located and distributed team. Both co-located as well as distributed team, they have their challenges. So let me talk about this distributed team. I'll again go back to one of the companies that I worked for. I was based out of US, and somehow we had to form a team that cuts across 3 different geographies, that goes on in North America, Europe, and in India. And there were members from each side. I had 4 members from Bangalore, 2 from Europe, and basically 3 from US. and I was doing the Scrum Master duties over there. So very soon what you find is when you have 3 geographies and when you have Europe in the mix, the only meeting time that is going to work for everyone is late night India meetings. So we formed this team, excellent momentum, very good, we did some really good things. But the end of like sprint 2, beginning of sprint 3, what I started noticing is people started sending offline updates for the daily stand-up. So daily stand-up is a ceremony that has to happen every day where all the team members get together. They get on the phone and they sync up. So in my case, what was happening was all the 4 members from the Bangalore side, they will send offline updates saying, you know what, this is what we did yesterday, this is what we are going to do today, and there are no impediments. But what was missing was the basic gist, you know, that we are not discussing it as a team and we're not syncing up because they were missing on some really important stuff. And to be very honest, I don't like taking meeting minutes on the daily stand-up because I think it's an overhead and it should not do it. Again, that's just my thoughts around daily stand-ups. So very soon, it happened on day 1, it happened on day 2, and I said, okay, no, there is something wrong over here. So I pinged them, I said, okay guys, what's going on? How come you guys don't attend the daily stand-up? And this guy said, Hiren, why are we always taking the hit? Why is India taking it all the time? Why are we on the late night meetings? And I said, oh, okay, so sorry, I messed up. Basically, I did not think it from that angle. Now that you tell me, it's perfectly valid that yeah, you are all doing late night meetings and you all have family, you all have personal life. So it is totally unfair on my part to expect you to join the meetings all the time. So we soon realized that, you know, this model might not be a very good model because anyway there is a delay. If there is something that I want from some member in Bangalore, it is already causing 24-hour delay. So forming a team with 3 sides with time distributed, it just doesn't work very well. But in the short term, we said, you know what, at least till we fix the problem, can we do this? Instead of all 4 of you joining the call, can you have your daily stand-up for between 4 of you, and 1 person can just participate in the daily stand-up, and we can do it on rotational basis till the problem is fixed. And eventually we did that, and we realized that, you know what, we have to have co-located teams. So again, that is just my take, that when it comes to co-located and distributed teams, try to go with co-located teams. It works out very well. Now, co-located team has a very big meaning. If you talk to Ken Schwaber, or if you talk to Jeff Sutherland, for them, co-located is you're sitting in one room where everyone is close to each other, and then there is some type of osmotic communication that happens. Osmotic communication is basically 2 people are talking about something, and the 3rd person overhears it. So maybe the case might be 1 person is saying, you know what, I think I'm going to remove this piece of code because I don't think anybody is using it, and then the other person just overhears it and say, hey, hold on, man, I need that code. So that's osmotic type of communication. So when it comes to Ken and Jeff, if 1 person is sitting on the 2nd floor and rest of the team is downstairs, it is a distributed team. It is not a co-located team for them. The next item I do want to talk about was the component and feature-based teams. So depending on how your organization is structured, you can have 2 different types of structures. What you're seeing on the left is component teams. So component teams are specialized teams. Like I have team of UI developers, I have a test team, I have team of programmers, maybe .NET or Java programmers, I have a team of database, and I have team of architects. So this is component teams. So when you have teams in this, you can just imagine, you know, if I have a story, I have to slice it. You know, there is some UI work over there, there is some test work, there is some database work, there is some architectural work, and now I need an integration team on top of it where they are going to take this whatever they have built and then work on it. So it becomes quite cumbersome if it comes to component teams. Whereas think of this thing on the other side is the feature teams or the cross-functional teams. When it comes to cross-functional teams, what we are talking about is all the needed expertise to complete a story from the backlog is available within this team. They can do justice for any of the story end to end. So that is feature team. Feature team is something that you will see most of the book recommend it, but depending on the organization structure, if it's a big distributed organization, you might have to go with the component teams, you might have to form service teams, so you'll have to just work through it. But again, this is just a take that what works out much better. Team size, a big thing. Again, normally we recommend that Agile team should be 7 to 9 members, and I also want to talk about dev and QA ratio. There is a reason that they say that it should be 7 to 9 members. I have been part of a journey where I had a team of 17 members in one of the Scrum teams. Honestly, it becomes very tiring, and there is a lot of chaos and a lot of confusion. So if you can think of it, the planning meetings, they are going to be much longer because you're taking a lot many more stories. That is number one that you're going to see. You're going to see that daily stand-ups don't end in 15 minutes. They are going to take much longer. You'll also, what you'll see is, you're going to form silos within the team. Instead of making the team come together, what you're going to do is you're going to form silos of maybe UI experts, silos of .NET experts, and silos of testers, and they'll all hang out together. So you don't want to do that, to be very honest. You want to keep like 7 to 9 members, and you also want to have a very good ratio of developers and quality engineering. Why? Because if you have 6 developers and 1 tester, and if you're keeping on cranking stories and the tester is just not able to keep up the pace, you're basically going to bottleneck him. So you want to have a very good ratio, and if you don't have the ratio, then you want to think of making one of your developers testers for that sprint till you get that additional tester, so that you keep a balance and you don't generate this huge technical debt. The other thing that I want to talk about was generalist versus specialist. So this is something that you will hear a lot when it comes to agile lingo, that if a truck goes over someone, the work should not stop. Again, there are 2 sides to this. This thing, basically, a generalist versus specialist, I think it's a very favorable thing, because if you think from agile perspective, it helps you become a complete engineer. So if you think of agile, normally if you're developers, you're just no longer developers, because you're also doing some type of testing, writing unit test cases, you're reviewing the acceptance test plan and everything. So basically you're a developer and a tester. And if you're a tester, you're just no longer a tester, you're also a developer, because you're developing automated tests. So it helps you become a complete engineer. However, what we need to keep in mind is, because this is a case incident that has happened in one of the teams, where there was a tester who says, you know what, because we are all generalists, so I should be able to pick up development tasks. No, sorry, you can't, because you are still a tester, because we need your skills, because you are a tester because you have the special skills, because you know how to break things, and then the other person is a developer because he knows how to make things. So you still want to do the work within the test side, but think about how you can automate different things. So that is something that you definitely want to keep in mind. The next item, training and coaching. I just can't emphasize this enough. I was myself a victim of training. I'll tell you when. This is again when I was working in US. We decided that we want to move to Agile. There was no formal coaching or training that happened. I was told that, you know what, this is a Scrum team, go ahead and you're the Scrum Master. I'm like, okay, but I don't know what a Scrum Master is. Oh, that's simple. Read that document. It's a Scrum guide that's available. I think it was like 14 or 15 pages at that time. And I read it. And honestly, I felt like I'm an expert, because it's so simple. It's very simple to understand. And I really felt I was an expert. And I said, okay, fine. And there was no one to overlook that, okay, what I'm doing is right or wrong. And the team is also new. So we started incorporating some practices in place. And we formed more teams, and I started training them. Fortunately, I got to work with Ken and Ken Schwaber, and Ken was, I went through his Scrum Master class for 2 days, and it was like an eye-opener. I said, oh my God, what have I been doing so far? I have been teaching wrong practices, and I did not just limit it to myself, I took it to other teams. The only good part was I was able to correct it. It was because it was within my limits, and I could correct it. Now think about this, that if you keep on doing this without any practice, or if you don't have any Agile coach, any training, I think it would be a fragile implementation of Agile. It can't be Agile at that point. And to be very honest, it would be a sin to not find help, because it would be like, why would you reinvent the wheel when there is so much help that is available? Again, it depends on what type of project, what type of program you're working on. But if it's a big program, you go ahead and find some help. It will only help you do better. Decision making. Again, Agile is all about constant inspect and adapt, do that constantly. And if there are decisions that have to be made, you have to be very fast. Don't build unnecessary hierarchy where you just have to go through multiple channels to get something done. So try to empower your teams, try to self-organize, let them self-organize, let them make this calculated decision, and if they fail, big deal. Let them learn from it. Again, failure depends what type of risks you're talking about, but that's the idea. And intra-team and inter-team dependencies and communication. Again, this is a big topic by itself, but let me just give you this example. I want to show you this, So if we have one team, very simple, right? One Scrum team, one product backlog, it works like a charm. Two teams, manageable, they can communicate amongst each other. It will work out very well. Now, as we move along, and if you when you start having multiple teams, you have to start putting a lot of governing bodies together. You'll have to say, you know what, now we have to manage all the Scrum teams. We have to put Scrum of Scrums so that we understand what's going on in each team. We'll have to put some type of community of practice where if there is some good practice that's being done by one team, we basically take it to other teams. We want some type of commonality across all these other teams. So these are all the things that you want to think about. There will be dependencies, and when there are dependencies, you just don't sit and twiddle your fingers. You have to figure out how can we do mock-ups, how can we move around this situation, and just still progress. So you want to think of all these different aspects when it comes to inter-team communication and complexity and all that stuff. So that was for this. Let's move on. So now I'm going to get into the crux of everything about sprint meetings and planning meetings and stand-ups, retrospective. So these are the different ceremonies. So let's talk about planning meetings. What can go wrong over there? So first thing about the planning meeting, which you normally observe, is you don't have a backlog. You don't have a good backlog. Even if you have a backlog, you have the acceptance criteria and things missing. So don't get into that mode. Make sure that you do enough work in the background so that when your team is ready, your backlog is ready, and you can move on. Planning meeting is just two things. You want to have a goal identified and you want to have tasks identified that we are going to work on. And your iteration effectiveness is on how well you do the planning. Try to keep the iteration lengths that are manageable, so that you can have focus. Don't try to say, what, we are going to do 4-week sprints. 4 weeks is a long time. If you're new to Agile, new to Scrum, 4 weeks will become too much. Try to limit it to like 2 weeks or so. It will give you a lot more focus, a lot more visibility. I talked about vertical slicing of stories. You want to have stories that the entire team can swarm around. So if you have like 5 stories on the board, you want to swarm around the first story, get it done, then move to the second story, get it done, then move to the third story. Don't try to open all the stories at once. It would be like you are doing mini waterfall, because what's going to happen is you're going to work. At the last day, you're going to give it all to the test engineer, and basically you're not going to meet your sprint goal most of the times. One more thing which is very near and dear to me about the planning meetings, when you have a story, don't just take the story and start saying, these are the tasks. Try to do some type of whiteboarding. Try to get the team on board. Put some type of design in place. Ensure that everyone within the team understands what is it that you're going to achieve as part of this story, and then create tasks, and then create your backlog. That is extremely important. If you think that there is a story you have no idea about, don't try to pull it in. Take a spike, understand more about that story, and when you have enough information, spike is basically a research work that you're going to do. You do enough work, and then you pull in the actual story. So that's what you want to do. Don't try to do too many things. And again, when it comes to the planning meeting, when the types of stories you're taking, the stories might come from the product owner. There might be some technical debt stories, that you have accumulated over time, that, these are the refactoring stories that I have to work on. So if these are the stories that you have in your backlog, make sure that you discuss it with your product owner and try to give some time to those stories too, because you don't want your technical debt to grow too big. It will eventually come and bite you. There might be defects that you have to work on. So you have to juggle all this very well. Now within the planning meeting, once the planning meeting is done, your story should not change. If the product owner comes and says, we have to change a certain story, then negotiate with them, and negotiate with them 2 folds. First is ask them, can't you wait for 2 weeks? And if he says no, this is, if we don't do this, the customer is we are going to lose our customer or something. If that's bad, then fine, we are going to pull it in. But what else can be moved out? Maintain sustainable pace. That's extremely important. Let's talk about stand-ups now. Stand-ups, again, I've seen multiple stand-ups in multiple forms, where just people just get there just to say, what, I have to just give the updates and I'm going to wash my hands. Make sure your stand-ups are adding value. It has to be value-driven. In Agile, we always talk about value. If it is not adding value, then you have to correct it. So think about that, are my stand-ups adding value? And make sure that it is used as a sync-up meeting. It is not a status meeting. It is not a reporting meeting to your Scrum Master or your manager or whoever. It is about sync-up meeting. It can be as thing as the items could be as good as, oh, by the way, I'm going to check in this. I'm working on this task. By 2 o'clock, I'll be checking in this code. So it would be good for everyone to rebase your code from the main branch, because otherwise your code is going to break. Something of that sort. I'm stuck with this. Can someone help me? So you can find the needed help. So that's all about sync-up meeting. When you do the stand-ups, just don't do it out of thin air. Make sure that you have an agile board where you're basically sticking the cheats. You look at the board and then talk about the tasks. Don't just stand in a circle and just say, I think it doesn't work that way. I remember I had one of the managers in one of the companies, and he told me, what, I do stand-ups, and I said, okay, how long does a stand-up last? He said, 1 hour. I said, what, 1 hour? Yeah, because he was the manager, he was also the Scrum Master, and the entire team used to report to him. And he said, 1 hour. I said, what do you talk? Oh, we talk about everything. What do you mean by everything? Oh, we talk about this program for the future gazing. I said, but that's not the meeting. It should not be done in stand-up. No, it works for us. So what, get away from that, because stand-ups has a specific meaning. It's called stand-up for a reason. You have to stand up and get it done in no more than 15 minutes. So you want to think about that meeting very carefully. Retrospective, again, it is a heartbeat of the entire sprint. Most of the times what you will see is people will go ahead, do the retrospective, and that's it, and they'll forget about everything else. So the idea behind retrospective is, first of all, it has to be fact-based. So if you have a 2-week sprint, you better have it fact-based. Whatever data you're collecting, there has to be data associated. It can't be based on the gut feel. So you collect the data, that's number one. And you might have like tons of improvement ideas. Let's say there are 15 improvement ideas. If you're doing a 2-week sprint, 15 ideas are too much. At the most, you can do 2 or maybe even 1. Don't even go to the 3rd idea. Take 2 ideas, do some type of root cause analysis, figure out a solution. Once you figure out a solution, assign an owner. Make sure the owner takes these ideas into the next planning meeting. Make sure that it is being incorporated. And when you do the next retrospective, before you start your retrospective, go back to your previous retrospective notes and say, okay, these are the 2 improvement ideas that we have taken. Did we solve the purpose or not? Because if you don't do that, you've just wasted your entire cycle. So retrospective has to be fed in very carefully. Again, when you do retrospective, ensure that you have neutral facilitator. The teams open up. That's the other challenge that you might see. What if there is a if there is a manager or some senior person in the room, and if the team doesn't open up, you're not going to get the data that you're looking for. So if needed, keep the managers at bay. Just say that, what, sorry, this is a retrospective, we can't do it. In fact, you might also want to think of getting the Scrum Master out and having a neutral facilitator who is going to help you do the retrospective. And again, retrospective can be done at multiple levels. You can do retrospective if you're having multiple teams. You can do retrospective at a program level. You can also say, what, I want to do retrospective on a Scrum Master, where you take the Scrum Master off, do a retrospective of the Scrum Master, and get the feedback and give it to the Scrum Master. Guys, this is what the team is thinking about you. These are the good things about you, and these are the things that you need to improve on. You can do the same thing for your product owner. If you have someone like a tech lead, you can do it for the tech lead. So there are multiple ways to use the retrospective. So use it wisely. There are multiple forms in which you can run the retrospective. Don't use the same pattern over and over again. It gets very boring, and you're not going to get the data that you're looking for. So be very creative on retrospective. I also want to talk about reviews. When it comes to reviews, we're basically talking about demos. When it comes to demo, don't show slide decks. The reviews are all about showing working software. You don't have to prepare slideware. Just take your laptop and show what you have demonstrated. Show it on some environment which is acceptable to everyone. You have to ensure that there are correct parties that have joined the retrospective to join the review meeting, so that you can get the feedback. And again, poke your business guys to give feedback, good or bad. If it is good, hear it from their mouth that okay, this is what you said during this retrospective. It is really, really important. And if you're having multiple teams, if some team comes and says, we don't have anything to demo, question them. There should never be the case that they don't have anything to demo. If they don't have anything to demo, we would still like to know what did you do and why did you deliver anything. So there are things like this that you want to keep in mind when it comes to retrospective. To review, sorry. Guys, Mohini, are we doing well? Do we still have time?
Taryn, if you wish to continue, you can.
Mohini, are you there?
Yeah, I'm there. If you wish to continue,
okay, fine.
You can.
So I will continue for 10 more minutes.
Okay, sure.
Okay, I'll continue for 10 more minutes in that case. Okay. So the next thing I want to do is the risk mitigation. So if you think about risk mitigation, right, there was a question that someone asked me, in fact. So I just want to bring it to that person, that risk mitigation is implicit. Risk management is implicit within Agile. So if you look at it, you get feedback at multiple levels. You get feedback during continuous integration. If your continuous integration done, you're going to get feedback that how is it happening? The deployment has happened, the tests have run, is everything holding up? You'll have daily stand-ups, that's where the feedback happens. You'll have demo every sprint. You'll have retrospective. You'll have planning meetings. So risk mitigation happens throughout the sprint. So it's there. I'm going to skip the estimation right now, but I do want to talk about program level pitfalls. This is very important. If you're managing a big program, you definitely want to think of having a clear definitions of roles and responsibilities, because if you're working, if you have been a very traditional shop where you have different titles like software engineer, senior software engineer, principal engineer, tech lead, team lead, project lead, manager, delivery manager, and so on, those roles are going to change. Those roles are kind of going to change, not at a lower level, but at a higher level. For example, Scrum Master. Normally, you don't see a role for Scrum Master. It always comes up as project manager or a tech lead. It is very different. So that race is going to be very different. Business analyst versus product owner, that race is going to be very different. So you want to think of all this and defining it if you're going to go big bang agile approach. Career progression is something that you want to be very, very careful of, because for example, I have many Scrum Masters coming and asking me, what, so now I'm a Scrum Master, what next for me? So if you are in Agile shop, you want to definitely think about, what is going to be the career path. Are they going to get into the delivery role? Are they going to get on the technical side, or what all? So you want to think about it very, very, very carefully. Rewards and recognition. Again, very near and dear. You want to be very careful about rewards and recognition, because in Agile, we encourage teamwork rather than individual heroes. So you want to think about putting a system in place where you still want to reward your individual heroes, but again, that's a totally different discussion. So you want to, it's a double-edged sword. So you want to keep that in mind about team rewards. Agility assessment. So if you are you have been doing Agile for a while, how do you know where you are? For that, you'll have to do some type of agility assessment. You'll have to go and figure out, where are we in our Agile journey? Where are we with our best practices? Where are we with our planning? Do we have the correct roles? Do we have the correct personnel within our teams? And lots of things. And then that assessment is going to give you some data. So based on the improvements that comes out, so say, what, in the next few sprints, we're going to work on this, and then again do the agility assessment and see where you stand. So you have to do that at a regular intervals. When it comes to Scrum of Scrums, what I mean is there are multiple teams, and now you have to tie the entire program together. You want to think about what all type of discussion has to happen. How do we know whether we are on track, we are not on track? How are we going to meet our release dates? Which team needs help? Defining process if needed, if there's a triage process, creating a support team. All this is basically a program wide, and it's a big role, and it's a big puzzle to fill. You might also want to think about building community of practices. You have multiple teams. There are lots of good things that are happening. But how do you ensure that now you're thinking of organizational transformation? It's not about just your group. You're talking about multiple groups. How can you build a community where the Scrum Masters from all the programs come together and they discuss, these are my challenges. How can I do? And you share amongst yourselves. Same thing for product owners. Same thing for business analysts. You want to think of putting some type of program together. Same thing for tech leads. How do we understand that, our architecture is so solid and we can just keep on doing better and better and better. So these are lots of things to tie together. So in the end, what I'm going to do is this, Agile is a puzzle. It is a big, big puzzle. If you think of it, there are multiple ceremonies, multiple artifacts. You're talking about the best practices of engineering, best practices like continuous integration, test-driven development, automation, and all that. It's a lot. It's a lot. So if I can just do one more analogy and say, there is something called boiling frog syndrome, and the syndrome is this: if you take a frog and put it in a boiling water, it's going to jump right out. However, if you take the frog and put him in the lukewarm water and slowly turn on the gas, the frog is going to cook itself to death. So the idea is to make Agile stick. You don't want to throw all the practices at once. See where you are and then start introducing one practice at a time, and most likely it will stick. So that's what is going to help you. In end, I'll close this with this topic by saying that Agile is a journey. It is going to take patience, perseverance, but do constant inspect and adapt, and I promise you Agile will stick. With that, I will end my webinar. Thank you for the opportunity, and I'm ready to take questions. Mohini, to you.
Thanks for the insightful presentation, Mr. Doshi. Let's quickly take up the questions. I have sent you the questions in your chat pane. You can please read them out and answer them.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, Mohini, I'm not seeing many questions right now. I'm not seeing any questions.
There are no questions in your chat pane? Aren't there any questions
there? Let me just expand this, please. Okay, I think there are. Sorry, I was looking at something else.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about resource planning in case of Agile development is a challenge. How do we mitigate this risk? Excellent question. So I'm going to talk about resource planning. So when you do your sprint planning, there is something called capacity planning that you have to do. So again, the capacity is going to vary from sprint to sprint depending on who is available, who is not going to be available, and also the work that comes into the sprint again varies depending on where you are in your program. So if you are in the early stages of your program where you're just developing things, you won't have any defects, or it will be the kind of bare minimum. So at that time, most likely you'll be able to use your capacity to your fullest. So for example, let's say you have 5 engineers and your capacity is 250 hours that you can work for 2 weeks. You can load yourself at 220 hours. Don't do more than 260 or so, because that will be too much. Load at 220, keep 30% kind of things that you might figure out. And again, what I like to emphasize is the sprint backlog, the tasks that you create out of your backlog. It is not a complete list. It will never be a complete list because you're done with your planning, and that sprint backlog is going to grow or shrink based on the things that you find when you're actually implementing the task. So your 220 might go to 250. And then as you move along in the program, you might have some defects and things. So once the defects start flowing in, what you can say is you can take like 10% off and maybe just say this 10% is for bug fixes, and then just monitor it between sprints to sprints to sprints. And if you think that 10% is not sufficient, you're doing 20%, in the next sprint take 20%. And if you think you're taking 20% but only 10% has been utilized, don't just twiddle your fingers for the other 10%. Go ahead, go to the backlog and take a story and start working on it. So that's how you might want to do it. Second is, how do you maintain sustainable development? I think I talked about it. You can ping me offline if you still have that question. what is difference between B sprint and S sprint? I don't know. I'm hearing it for the first time, to be very honest. So I won't be able to answer that question. How to implement Agile in production support? That's a fantastic question. So basically, when it comes to support, what happens is your priorities are going to change on a daily basis. So what you can do is you can do a one-day sprint where you get together in the morning. You say, okay, what are the high-level items that we are going to work on? Plan it out throughout the day, work on it. At the end of the day, you can just monitor where you are. And the next day in the planning meeting, again, you can figure out where you what the status was, what are the new items. So basically, you do one-day sprint. So all the activities happen within that one day. What are the main aspects of Agile in case of regression / stress testing? It is the same as the traditional. In Agile, we do emphasize automation. Stress testing does happen. The Agile advocates normally don't advise on hardening sprint, but the fact of life is we are not, everyone doesn't do that great when it comes to automation and things, and we do have to keep most of our regression testing and stuff towards the end. So does the performance testing and stuff. So there will be hardening sprint, and you can basically beat the product out over there. Sir, what is the difference between Agile methodology and project management method like PMP and Prince2? Please ping me offline. I will talk to you about that. Do you know knowledge transfer should happen? Do you think knowledge transfer should not happen in Agile? That is absolutely wrong. Knowledge transfer should happen all the time because we are talking about generalists rather than specialists. Question on time boxing. When it states that the sprint should be time boxed, would it mean that if the time box for sprint 1 is 2 weeks, then sprint 2 should also be 2 weeks? Wouldn't my sprint time boxing for sprint depend on the complexity of my incremental delivery, and wouldn't this be different from sprint in such a case? No. When we say it is going to be of 2 weeks, it should be of 2 weeks. So basically what you have to figure out is what is going to fit in that 2 weeks. So if you think you have a bigger story, you can't fit that in, slice it further so that it fits into that 2 weeks. So that's what you do. You don't do anything that spans across multiple sprints and keep it limited. And you don't say, you know what, this is going to be 3 weeks. For this I need 3 week sprints. I'm going to make it 3 week. No, sprint is a discipline, and they basically you have to adhere to it and follow that discipline. Don't change your sprint time box based on that. Just a minute. Where can we get document templates that can be used for Agile process, example, storyboard, burn down chart, etc. You can get everything on your good friend Google. Just type it and you're going to get it. Is it possible to have the same Scrum Master to lead 2 different Scrum teams and a sprint as well? Yes and no. I talked about the example. If you can do justice, you can. If you can't do justice, you shouldn't. Hi Hiren, great show indeed. I have a question though. I have a sprint plan for my cut phase. During sprint time, is there any changes? If there are any changes, how do I plan my sprint plan? Exactly, it's negotiation at 2 levels. Mr. Product Owner, if I'm going to pull this item in, what is it that I can move out? Or the first question should be, can we at least wait for 2 weeks? Okay, does PMI ACP help in Agile management? Yes, because I'm myself a PMI ACP. I think PMI has come up with a very good curriculum compared to other curriculums that we have. It does talk in detail about extreme programming. It does talk about lean Kanban. It talks about Scrum practices. So I don't think it's going to hurt. It's only going to help. Whether you will be a very good practitioner after doing the certification, that I will leave it up to you. On what type of skills you have. We are a front-end team. How do we bring in Scrum process into our development model? I will need more information on this. So if you can ping me offline, I'll be more than happy to help you on that. One point that you mentioned about co-location of team, are we saying that in places where the teams are distributed across globe, Agile is hard to implement? Yes, Agile is hard to implement, but that is fact of life. Any project, any product development team that you work on, or any service-oriented company that you work on, distribution is going to be a way of life. So I think we should adapt to it instead of running away from it. And there are some great tools that are available in the market, like telepresence. We can use some good project management tools that are available for sharing information and stuff. We can use Wiki for collaboration. So we can definitely mitigate that. Are you going to get the same benefits as sitting in the room? We might not get 100%, but if I get 80%, I can live with it. So, and that is fact of life. So we have to adhere to that. Okay. Can we use Agile in maintenance project? Exactly like the support project, we can use it, absolutely. Can resources working on one sprint be moved to the next one before having the first one completed? Can some resources continue working on one sprint while the rest move to the next? Don't do that. I will tell you why. You want to keep the Scrum team intact as far as possible. Unfortunately, we did not get to talk about velocity and other release planning and estimation activities. But velocity is one of the metrics that you use to figure out what the team can deliver and help with the release planning. If you have a lot of churn where people are moving in and out, your velocity is going to be all over the graph and you won't be able to make any type of prediction. Plus, it is very difficult to self-organize and get the motivation that that is needed within the team to get the work done. So it is best to keep the teams intact as far as possible with minimal disruptions. Because if again, if I can just take it a bit further, you might want to read about Bruce-Tuckman model, where the team goes through forming, storming, norming, and performing stages when you have any new team that is formed or any new member gets added. So the team will go through those phases, and it has its own cycle, and it's not good. Can we consider Agile as a super micro waterfall model plus new age demand? No, Agile is not a waterfall model. So it is different. Agile is very different. So I believe that was the that was the last question, Mohini, that I had. Is there anything else that I can help with?
We have a lot more, Mr. Hiren, but we won't be able to take up all the questions due to limited availability of time. So it was indeed a great session.
Okay.
I would also like to thank all our participants for their support in making this webinar a success. The recording of the webinar will be available on techgeek.com by tomorrow. Thank you, Mr. Doshi, once again for your session on how Agile turns fragile. Thank you to our participants. Have a great evening.
Sure. Thank you so much.